The galaxy had long believed humans incapable of subtlety, diplomacy, or restraint, but they were catastrophically wrong. For nearly 3 centuries, humans had drifted along the periphery of the galactic stage, industrious and relentless, but quiet, never expanding too aggressively, never provoking unnecessary conflicts, never seeking prestige in the endless political theater of the Stellar Council. They seemed, to many species, almost harmless, a curious anomaly of resilience and creativity, but nothing more. And then came the Vorthan Siege. No one in the Council remembered it except humans, because no one else understood what had truly been done for them. A small, peaceful species called the Tiliaki had once saved a crippled Terran diplomatic cruiser from annihilation after a pirate ambush, risking themselves to pull the dying crew from the void, nursing them back to health, and refusing any reward. The Tiliaki were small, soft-spoken, and militarily insignificant, and the galaxy largely overlooked them, but humans did not forget. They archived the event, recited it, embedded it into their diplomatic doctrine under one immutable phrase: debts must be repaid. For 200 years, that phrase echoed in human education, culture, and government, a quiet promise waiting for its moment. No one expected that moment to come in the form of an extinction order. The Vorthan Dominion, a brutal expansionist empire, issued a decree claiming Tiliaki space, demanding full surrender within 40 cycles, and the Council refused to intervene. The Tiliaki pleaded, but their voices were small, trembling, lost beneath the roar of empires that saw no value in protecting them. Even the Council dismissed the matter, labeling the Tiliaki strategically irrelevant. But one voice spoke up in the chamber, calm, steady, and impossibly cold. The Terran ambassador simply said, "Humans owe them a debt." Silence fell, heavy and uneasy, for no one knew what that meant. But soon they would. Within hours, the human fleets mobilized. Within days, every Terran shipyard blazed with activity. And within weeks, the greatest armada humanity had ever assembled began its burn toward Tiliaki space. The Council scrambled, panicked, but there was no stopping this. The galaxy had always wondered what humans might do when they took something personally. Now they were about to find out. And when the first human dreadnoughts arrived on the edges of the Tiliaki system, burning like vengeful stars, the galaxy felt its first tremor of fear. The Vorthan Dominion watched the Terran fleet approach with mocking amusement at first. Certain humans were posturing, certain they would retreat once faced with the Dominion's vast military power. But humans did not posture, they prepared. The Terran armada that gathered in Tiliaki orbit shattered all known logistical records, an impossible force forged not out of conquest, but obligation. Thousands of warships gleamed like metallic storms, carriers filled with mechanized battalions, frigates bristling with point defense arrays, dreadnoughts carrying weapons whose schematics were sealed even from the Council. All for one tiny species that had saved a single human ship centuries earlier. The Tiliaki themselves didn't understand it, trembling as they watched ship after ship arrive, wondering why humans were doing this, why such giants would defend them. Terran Admiral Rhea Solik stood before them, bowing slightly, and said only, "A debt is owed, and humanity pays what it owes." Her voice carried a tone the Tiliaki had never heard before from any species, devotion hardened into steel. When the Dominion's first strike force entered the system, expecting no resistance, they found instead the full fury of a species that had built itself on survival, innovation, and righteous loyalty. The battle was short and horrifying. Human war doctrine was precise and unrelenting, each strike calculated, each formation flowing like a singular organism of war. The Dominion ships fell in blazing fragments, their commanders stunned into silence as the Terran armada carved through them with terrifying efficiency. Word spread across the galaxy at light-speed relays, echoing into every government hall, every military citadel, every broadcast channel. Humans are fighting for the Tiliaki. Humans are winning. Humans are not stopping. Shock became confusion, confusion became fear, and fear rapidly became dread. For if this was what humans unleashed in the name of a small debt, then what might they unleash when truly angered? The Dominion sent more fleets, larger ones, but the more they sent, the more humanity responded. Terran engineers activated ancient megastructures, war factories, and quantum foundries, turning human space into a roaring engine of vengeance. One Dominion warlord famously burst into laughter at the reports, calling humans overdramatic primates. 2 weeks later, his capital ship drifted in pieces across a lifeless moon. Across the galaxy, every species watched the human advance, and for the first time in centuries, they understood what they had mistaken. Humans were not harmless, they were simply patient. And the debt was only beginning to be repaid. The Vorthan Dominion prided itself on being the most ruthless power in the spiral arm, but ruthlessness meant nothing before a foe that couldn't be intimidated, coerced, or broken. Humans fought with a terrifying unity, as though the entire species moved with one heartbeat, one purpose, one fire. Dominion propagandists tried to reassure their citizens, proclaiming victory was imminent, but every day new images spread, Terran fleets slicing through fortified sectors, ground forces landing with surgical precision, evacuation shuttles rescuing Tiliaki civilians under fire. The galaxy had never seen anything like it, humanity wagging a full-scale war not for territory, not for resources, not for revenge, but for principle. That was what shook the galaxy most. A species capable of industrial war on a colossal scale who did not require hatred to fight, only duty. Dominion High Command held emergency sessions as human forces advanced toward their core territories, panic leaking into every discussion. How can they sustain this pace? Where are they getting the resources? Why won't they negotiate? The answer was simple, yet no Dominion leader understood it. Humans weren't negotiating because this wasn't diplomacy. This was repayment. And repayment could not be bargained down. Terran psyops broadcast a single repeated message across every Dominion channel. Humanity remembers, humanity protects, humanity repays. To the Dominion, the words sounded like a threat. To humans, they were a promise. When Dominion forces attempted a desperate counterattack at the Farsia Nebula, they launched the largest ambush in their military history. But humans didn't just anticipate it, they manipulated it. Admiral Solix allowed her outer fleets to appear weakened, luring the Dominion deep into a trap of gravitational mines, stealth carriers, and temporal delay torpedoes. It was over in minutes. Hundreds of Dominion ships vanished in cascading implosions, torn apart by weapons they had never seen before. Survivors whispered one phrase in terror: "The humans were waiting for us." After Farsia, the Dominion's resolve crumbled, cracks spidering through their empire, rebellions rising, military councils fracturing under paranoia and blame. The galaxy watched as human fleets continued forward, never wavering, never slowing, their discipline chilling in its perfection. The moment that broke the Dominion's morale entirely came when the Terran flagship broadcast a live feed of Tiliaki children playing safely inside its hangar bay, guarded by armored Terran soldiers standing watch like immovable statues. The message was undeniable. Humans weren't fighting for conquest. They were fighting for people who had once shown them kindness. And nothing in the galaxy was more dangerous than a human defending a friend. As the human advance carved even deeper into Dominion space, the rest of the galaxy found itself at an unexpected crossroads. Empires that had once dismissed humanity as generic and unremarkable now reassessed them with trembling urgency. Some saw opportunity and rushed to offer support, eager to avoid being on the wrong side of this war. Others watched in fearful silence, realizing humanity had held back for centuries, hiding its true capabilities beneath diplomacy and trade agreements. But the most terrified were the species who had previously antagonized humans, suddenly wondering whether old disputes might one day be interpreted as debts or grievances. The phrase, "Do humans owe us anything?" became a nervous joke whispered in political corridors. And the more frightening question followed. Do humans believe we owe them? Meanwhile, the Tiliaki pleaded with the Terrans to slow down, afraid of what the war might escalate into, but humanity simply shook its collective head. You saved us once, the human diplomats said, so we save you completely. The Tiliaki had never been protected so fiercely in their entire history, and many wept openly every time Terran soldiers bowed respectfully to them, treating them not as burdens, but as honored allies. Across the stars, smaller species rallied behind humanity, inspired by the idea that a giant could be benevolent, that power could be wielded not for dominance, but for loyalty. The newly formed Unity Pact declared moral support for the Terran campaign, and soon dozens of minor fleets joined the outer defensive lines, guarding Tiliaki refugees and supply chains. It was the first time in galactic history that small species dared to stand against a major empire. Because now they weren't standing alone. They were standing behind humans. And that made all the difference. The Dominion attempted one final gambit, threatening to annihilate captured Tiliaki colonies, believing humans would retreat rather than risk innocent lives. They miscalculated catastrophically. Within hours, Terran operatives launched simultaneous deep strike rescues, infiltrating Dominion strongholds, extracting civilians, and disabling weapons before the Dominion commanders even realized what was happening. The missions were impossible, suicidal by any tactical standard, and yet every team succeeded. Because humans did not consider them missions. They considered them obligations. And an obligation must be fulfilled. The galaxy watched in stunned awe as humanity completed what should have been impossible. The Dominion's leverage evaporated, their threats rendered hollow, their fear tactics obsolete. And humanity, calm, relentless, unstoppable, continued forward. Not with vengeance, but with certainty. The certainty of a species that knew exactly what it was doing and why it must be done. The end of the war did not arrive with a final battle, but with a final realization. The Vorthan Dominion understood at last that it could not win, not because humans were stronger, though they undeniably were, but because humans were committed. A species fighting for pride or conquest could be negotiated with, distracted, exhausted. A species fighting for principle could not. And a species fighting for gratitude was utterly unstoppable. When the Dominion High Command broadcast their surrender, trembling as they admitted defeat, the galaxy expected humanity to demand harsh reparations, new territories, or punitive control. But humanity shocked them once again. All Terrans requested was the complete liberation of Tiliaki worlds, reparations paid directly to the tiny species, and legally binding protections ensuring they would never be threatened again. No territory for humanity. No tribute. No empire. Just the safety of their friends. The council chamber wept, astonished, humbled, fearful, and deeply moved. The galaxy had assumed power inevitably corrupted, that no species could resist exploiting victory. But humans had not waged war for themselves. They had waged war for a promise made centuries ago. The final scene broadcast across known space became legend. A Tiliaki elder stepping onto the Terran flagship, bowing deeply as the human crews stood at attention and whispering with trembling emotion. "Why did you do all this for us?" Admiral Solix knelt so she could look the tiny elder in the eyes. "Because once, when we were weak, you protected us," she said, and humans do not forget kindness. The galaxy trembled, recognizing a truth more terrifying and comforting than any weapon. Humans were not the species to fear when wronged. They were the species to fear when grateful. For a human, repaying a debt was not a mere ally. They were a force of nature, an unstoppable tide, a guardian forged in fire and loyalty. And as the Terran armada finally stood down, returning to peaceful formation, every empire, every government, every species whispered the same realization. If humans repay kindness with this much power, then one must pray never to become the target of their justice. The debt was paid, the galaxy forever changed, and humanity, calm and resolute, returned home. But the stars remembered, and they would never forget.